A Literary Therapeutic Companion. Season 1, Identity, Inner Truth and Becoming. Episode 5, The Inner Measure. Rilke's Path Toward an Inner Truth. Chapter 1, A Quiet Beginning. The Question of the Inner Measure. Welcome to this 5th episode of the Literary Therapeutic Companion. Perhaps you already sense, as you hear the title, that today we take a step that is different from the steps before. Not bigger, not louder, but deeper. In the first 4 episodes we turned toward self-attunement, the inner axis, the loss of one's own voice, and the return to oneself. Each of these movements was part of a larger arc, an arc that brings us to a quiet but essential question. What do I measure myself against? Not, what does the world measure me against? Not, what do my roles measure me against? Not, what does my past, my fear, or the expectations of others measure me against? But, what do I measure myself against? It is a question that rarely becomes loud. It does not push. It does not demand attention. It is more like an inner tone, one that becomes audible only when the outer world grows quiet. Perhaps you know this tone. Perhaps it appears in moments when you feel you have lost yourself, or in moments when you wonder whether what you do truly comes from within, or from an old pattern, an old fear, an old expectation. The inner measure is not a judgment. It is not a moral compass. It is not a should or a must. It is something else, something quieter, something that cannot be explained but can be felt. It is the point within us where we know, this is me, and just as clearly, this is not me. Rainer Maria Rilke described this point again and again, not as a concept, not as a theory, but as an experience, as an inner movement, as something that reveals itself only when we become still. Before we go deeper, take a moment that belongs only to you. Breathe in and out. Perhaps you sense a place within you that is not loud, a place that does not push, a place that does not ask whether you are enough, a place that simply exists. A quiet inner measure that does not compare but recognizes. With this space, we begin our journey into the question, how does an inner measure form? And how do we find it again when we have lost it? This episode is an invitation to slow down, to listen, to feel, to remember. Because identity does not arise from outer voices. It arises where we listen to ourselves. Chapter 2, Why the Inner Measure Shapes Identity. Sometimes identity does not form where we expect it, not in roles, not in tasks, not in what we achieve or fulfill. Identity forms in something much quieter, in an inner measure that tells us who we are and who we are not. When people speak of identity, they often think of outer markers, biography, decisions, relationships, origins. But identity is not a catalogue. It is not a resume. It is not a picture we can fix once and keep forever. Identity is a movement, an inner axis, a quiet knowing that changes, deepens, shifts, and yet remains recognizable. In the earlier episodes of this season, we felt this movement already. In self-attunement, in the inner axis, in the loss of voice, in the silence that protects, in the loyalty to oneself. All these movements lead to a central question. How do I recognize myself? The inner measure is not a judgment. It is not a moral finger pointing at right or wrong. It is something deeper, a resonance. Perhaps you know this moment. You do something and something inside you whispers, "This is me," or "This is not me." It is not a thought, not an argument. It is a feeling. Many people lose this inner measure over time, not because they fail, but because the world is loud, because expectations press, because roles demand, because we learn to adapt in order to belong, because we believe we must earn our worth. And so a quiet distance forms within us, barely noticeable until we feel it. Rilke understood this distance, not as a mistake, not as a weakness, but as a human experience. He does not say, "Find your measure." He says, "Go into yourself." A very different movement. Because the inner measure is not something we construct. It is something we rediscover. Identity arises not from outer stability, but from inner resonance, from a measure that does not compare, but recognizes. Chapter 3. Rilke as a poet of the inner axis. When we meet Rilke in this episode, we do not meet him as a monument, not as a historical figure, not as a poet placed on a pedestal. We meet him as someone who knew an inner movement that many people discover only later in life. The movement toward a measure that does not come from outside. Rilke took the inner world seriously, not as a retreat, not as an escape, but as a source, as an origin, as the place where the true self forms. He believed that a person does not grow by adapting, but by deepening, not by comparing, but by listening, not by proving, but by inhabiting oneself. His letters are not written from above. They do not instruct. They do not correct. They do not judge. They are like a quiet room in which someone says, "I have searched this path too. I know uncertainty. I know the questions. I know the struggle." Rilke does not write about identity. He writes from identity. He does not write about inner life. He writes from inner life. He does not write about the inner measure. He writes from an inner measure. This is why his words still resonate today. Rilke believed in becoming, in slow movements, in inner processes that cannot be rushed, in truths that grow like trees. Perhaps that is why his language is full of nature. Trees, seasons, fruits that need time, paths that reveal themselves only when walked. Identity for Rilke is not a state. It is a becoming, a rhythm, a quiet, steady pulse that is not loud but unmistakable. Chapter 4, Reading 1, on Ripening and the Inner Measure. Before we enter this reading, take a moment to become still. Rilke writes in the 7th letter, everything is gestation, and then bringing forth. To let each impression and each seed of a feeling ripen within, in the dark, in the inaccessible, the unconscious, beyond the reach of one's own understanding. These words open a space, not in the mind, but deeper. Rilke is not speaking about patience in the everyday sense. He is speaking about an inner time, a time that does not follow calendars, expectations, or the speed of the world. He speaks of ripening, a becoming that does not arise from will, but from being. Imagine the tree he evokes, not as a picture, but as an inner experience. A tree standing in early spring, the earth still cold, the nights still sharp, the wind restless. And yet the tree does not rush. It does not force itself to grow. It does not try to outrun the season. It stands. It breathes. It trusts. We humans often rush. We want clarity before clarity is ready. We want decisions before decisions have formed. We want ripeness before we have ripened. But Rilke says, everything is gestation. There are phases in which something grows within us without being visible. Phases in which we change without being able to name it. Phases in which we feel movement without knowing its direction. These phases are not mistakes. They are necessary. They are part of the inner measure. And then comes the moment of bringing forth. Not dramatic, not loud, but like a quiet opening. A thought becomes clear. A feeling becomes true. A sentence forms within you. This is me. The inner measure does not arise from speed. It arises from ripening. Chapter 5. Psychological Reflection on the First Passage. When we listen to Rilke's words, everything is gestation and then bringing forth, we hear more than a poetic image. We hear a psychological truth that reaches into the deepest layers of human experience. Inner ripening is not a metaphor. It is a process. A slow, organic, often invisible movement within us. A movement that cannot be forced, cannot be accelerated, cannot be controlled. It is a becoming. In psychology, there is a term that mirrors Rilke's insight: inner integration. Integration does not mean understanding everything. It does not mean naming everything. It does not mean having everything under control. Integration means that something within us is given time. Time to settle, time to find its place, time to become part of a larger whole. When Rilke speaks of gestation, he describes precisely this inner work. The work that happens beneath the surface, beneath language, beneath conscious intention. These are the phases in which identity forms, not through decisions, not through clarity, but through quiet inner organization. Many people mistake these phases for stagnation, for uncertainty, for weakness. But psychologically, they are among the most fertile times of life. They are the times in which we grow roots, the times in which we gather ourselves, the times in which we become capable of recognizing what is truly ours. The tree in Rilke's image becomes a symbol for this work. A tree does not grow by effort. It grows because it is rooted, because it trusts the soil, because it trusts the season, because it trusts its own rhythm. It does not compare itself. It does not rush. It does not apologize for its pace. It simply grows. In psychodynamic thinking, a person begins to find themselves, then they stop orienting their life around outer measures and begin listening to their inner rhythm. This rhythm is often quiet. It often contradicts the speed of the world. It often contradicts expectations. It often contradicts what we have been taught. And yet it is true. Rilke's words invite us into a radical trust. Trust what is growing in you, even if you cannot yet name it. This trust is not naive. It is not passive. It is not a withdrawal from life. It is a turning toward oneself, a willingness to allow inner processes to unfold without forcing them into premature clarity. Perhaps there is something in you that is ripening now, something that has not yet taken shape, something that needs time, something that needs quiet, something that needs your patience. Perhaps it is a feeling you have avoided, perhaps a wish you have not dared to name, perhaps a truth that has been waiting for you to slow down. Rilke reminds us that we do not need to know the outcome in order to trust the process. The inner measure is not a judgment. It is a ripening, a slow, steady, organic becoming. And everything that is true grows in its own time. Chapter 6, Reading 2. On Inner Trust and the Limits of Outer Guidance. Before we enter the second reading, take a moment to become still again. This passage is not merely a text. It is a posture, a way of standing within oneself, a way of listening. Rilke writes in the 8th letter, "It is good to be solitary, for solitude is difficult. That something is difficult must be a reason the more for us to do it. These lines carry a quiet strength. They speak of something many people discover only slowly, that the answer we seek cannot be given from outside, that the measure we long for cannot be handed to us, that the truth we need must grow within. Rilke is not glorifying isolation. He is not asking us to withdraw from the world. He is reminding us that there is a space within us that no one else can enter. A space where our life gathers itself. A space where our truth takes shape. Imagine this space for a moment, not as a room, not as a landscape, but as a quiet chamber. A place where your experience rests, where your sorrows breathe, where your longings wait, where your strength sleeps until it is needed. Rilke's words suggest that this space is not empty. It is full of everything that makes you who you are. Your story, your wounds, your hopes, your possibilities. Not as burdens, but as depth. When he writes, "It is good to be solitary," he is not praising loneliness. He is praising the courage to turn inward, even when it is difficult. Because difficulty is not a sign that we are on the wrong path. It is often a sign that we are approaching something true. Perhaps you know this kind of difficulty. The difficulty of listening to yourself when outer voices are loud. The difficulty of trusting your own rhythm when the world demands speed. The difficulty of carrying your own life without asking others to define it for you. Rilke's words remind us, it is good to carry what is ours. It is good to trust what is within us. It is good to walk the path that only we can walk. With this reading, we move into the next chapter, a reflection on how language itself becomes a space in which identity can grow. Chapter 7. Literary Reflection. Language as an inner space. When we speak of identity, we often speak of biography, of choices, of relationships, of roles. But there is another way to approach identity, a way Rilke understood deeply, through language. Language is not only a tool. It is not only a means of communication. It is a space, a resonance chamber, an inner landscape. Words do not merely describe. They open. They reveal. They create room for something to become visible. Perhaps you have experienced this. You read a sentence and suddenly something within you shifts. You hear a phrase and it touches a place you did not know was waiting. You speak a truth aloud. And only in the speaking does it become real. Language is not only expression, it is recognition. Rilke's letters are full of such spaces. They are not instructions, they are invitations. They do not tell us who we are. They help us hear what is already within us. His words are like rooms with open windows, rooms in which we can breathe, rooms in which we can listen, rooms in which we can feel ourselves again. When we read Rilke, we do not receive answers. We receive resonance. We receive a quiet echo of our own truth. This is why literature can shape identity, because it gives us language for what we feel before we can name it. Identity grows in these linguistic spaces, in the pauses, in the images, in the quiet movements between the lines. Language becomes a mirror, but it also becomes a home, a place where we can return to ourselves. With this understanding, we move into the next chapter, a practical impulse that helps you sense your inner measure in the small moments of daily life. Chapter 8. Practical Impulse. The inner measure in daily life. The inner measure does not reveal itself in grand decisions. It reveals itself in small moments, moments so quiet that we often overlook them. Perhaps you know these moments. You say yes, but something inside you whispers no. You stay silent, though something within you wants to speak. You move forward, though something in you wants to pause. You hold on, though something in you longs to let go. These moments are not trivial. They are the places where the inner measure becomes audible. If you wish, you may carry 3 gentle questions with you today, not as tasks, not as obligations, but as companions. First, what feels true in me and what does not? Truth is often quiet. It does not argue. It does not insist. It simply feels like a small inner yes. Untruth feels like a tightening, a subtle resistance, a quiet not this. Second, what in me needs space to unfold? Sometimes we do not know what we want because we have not given ourselves time to feel it. Perhaps there is a thought that returns, a longing you have ignored, a feeling that needs room, a truth that needs quiet. Third, what small step brings me closer to myself? The inner measure does not demand dramatic gestures. It asks for nearness, for one small step, a breath that belongs to you, a sentence that rises from within, a decision that feels warm. Identity grows through these small movements, through loyalty to what lives within. Chapter 9. Meditation. The inner measure. If you wish, make yourself comfortable. Let your body settle into a posture that feels natural, supported, unforced. Let your breath come and go without shaping it, without guiding it, without asking anything of it. Simply notice that you are breathing, that you are here, that this moment belongs to you. Now imagine, not with effort, not with precision, but with a gentle openness, that somewhere within you there is a quiet line. Not a straight line, not a perfect line. A living line. A line that moves with you, that shifts as you shift, that grows as you grow. This line is your inner measure. It does not judge. It does not compare. It does not demand. It recognizes. Perhaps you sense it as warmth. Perhaps as a soft widening in the chest. Perhaps as a subtle clarity behind the sternum. Perhaps as a quiet presence that has no shape at all. Whatever you feel or do not feel is welcome. With each breath, allow this line to become a little more distinct. Not brighter, not louder, just more familiar. As if you were remembering something you have always known but rarely touched. Imagine this line extending gently through you, from a place deep within the body outward into your awareness. It is not rigid, it is not fixed, it is alive. It bends with you, it steadies you, it gathers you. Now imagine that this line responds to what is true for you. When something aligns with your inner truth, the line feels warm, open, quietly upright. When something does not align, the line tightens, dims or withdraws. Not as punishment, but as guidance. Let your breath meet this line. Let it touch it. Let it soften it. Let it strengthen it. If you wish, you may say inwardly, I may trust my own rhythm. Then, I may trust what grows in me. Let these words settle. Let them sink into the quiet spaces within you. Let them become part of your breath, part of your inner landscape, part of your measure. Perhaps you sense now that this line, this inner measure, has always been with you. Not loud, not demanding, but steady. A quiet companion that waits for you to listen. When you are ready, return gently. With a breath, a small movement of the hands, a soft opening of the eyes. The inner measure remains. It is yours. It grows with you. It carries you. Chapter 10. The Return to the Self. As we come to the end of this episode, perhaps you still sense something of the inner measure we touched today. A warmth, a quiet alignment, a subtle clarity that was already within you long before these words began. Rilke has accompanied us through this journey, not as a teacher, not as authority, but as a companion. His letters are not instructions. They are invitations. They open spaces rather than filling them. They remind us of what we already know but often forget to trust. If you feel drawn to his voice, you may read the letters to a young poet in their original form. They are freely accessible, and you are warmly invited to explore them yourself, slowly, quietly, in your own rhythm. Not to find answers, not to follow advice, but to feel how his words resonate in you, how they open inner rooms, how they help you hear your own measure more clearly. Identity does not arise from outer certainty. It arises from inner resonance, from the quiet recognition of what is yours and what is not, from the courage to trust your own ripening, from the willingness to listen to yourself even when the world is loud. As you leave this episode, carry this gentle knowing with you. You may trust your own pace. You may trust your own depth. You may trust your own measure. It has been with you all along. Until the next episode, may the quiet truth within you accompany you, and may you feel that it carries you. If you feel called to wander a little deeper, scripts, audio pieces, and small companion materials are available on my channels including YouTube and Payhip. Perhaps one of them will walk a little further with you.